So I think it's safe to say that anyone who has frequented video game circles for long periods of time, or at least the interwebs, is somewhat familiar with the Superman game that graced Nintendo 64 consoles. This rather questionable release from 1999 has been subject to ridicule, mockery, torture, and perhaps worst of all, hundreds upon hundreds of terrible angry video game reviews over the course of who knows how long. But then there's Superman for Game Boy, released in 1997 courtesy of Titus, the very same folks who would bring you that wonderful N64 title we talked about a little over 2 years later. I actually did play this ages ago for the sake of a stupid little video, but that was running off an emulator, and it was only until recently that I knew somebody that had a copy of said game, which had Super Game Boy compatibility. And what does said compatibility provide? A bland border and garish green colors. Yeah, thanks a lot, Titus. Turns out that's the default color setting on the Super Game Boy when it comes to Superman. And to make matters even worse, you can't change these settings, nor can you change the colors or the control options even. So congratulations, Titus, on an absolutely miserable first impression, and I haven't even started playing the game yet. So, let's get into the game. You are the Caped Wonder, and your main goal is to go through 6 stages collecting keys, either by claiming them out in the open or by defeating any bad guys that might possess them. Not much to it in theory, and well, it's better than flying through rings, which you probably couldn't do in a 2D setting, but it doesn't quite work out that well. Enemies will be all over the place and they can hurt you because of course they can, and if you lose all your health, you die and have the option to continue up to 6 times before it's game over. I very much wanted to not continue this game, but I pushed onwards regardless. Your only attack in the game is a simple punch. You have no heat vision, no super strength, no freeze breath, none of the cool shit that Superman can do. You just punch dudes and also punch bullets in an attempt to deflect them back at their source, which would have been a neat bit if the hit detection was worth a damn. But you can fly by holding down the A button, which doesn't sound too bad, but the execution's rather awkward, and the Caped Wonder has trouble with handling himself while airborne. Make of that what you will. So you hold down the A button to levitate upwards, but letting go of the button will drop you downwards. Any hit you take from an enemy will also drop you downwards, and you'll fall a bit before you're able to fly upwards again. Trying to control the Caped Wonder, especially trying to get him to fly in a straight horizontal line, is a bit of a chore. Actually, I take that back. It's plenty of a chore. Very unresponsive, very cumbersome flight controls, and it is unfortunately your main means of navigating these stages that are maze-like and require some swift flying skills, something you obviously do not have here. This is especially troublesome in stages 2 and 5, the auto-scrolling levels, where you're required to fly from one end to another while avoiding falling down the bottom of the screen, because if this happens, then the game declares you have quit the fight and it's game over, which is... No, I'm sorry, fuck you. I didn't quit the fight. I got the fight in, I lost the momentum, I got the hit, fell down a bit, I fell off the screen, but for some reason I died and you say I quit. Fuck off. Yeah, sorry, where was I again? So, it goes without saying this is not a fun game. It's boring due to the bare-bones nature of the gameplay and the somewhat cumbersome controls where you can't fly properly, as well as the lack of distinct Superman abilities that makes him Superman and not some generic Caped Wonder. It's needlessly irritating due to the imperfect hit detection and otherwise bland level design with enemies that are constantly shooting at you, with your only defense being a punch that may or may not deflect shed shots. And of course, what's a game without a shitty underwater sequence complete with headache-inducing wavy screen effect? Oh yeah, a good game. Yeah, that last bit with the headache is not an exaggeration either. I've played this level for 5 minutes, and I had to pause the game and lie down, and I slept for an hour or two. So, yeah, that hurt my head, actually. It really did. But, back to the review portion, I suppose, for lack of a better term. So I've already complained about the puke green color scheme on my Super Game Boy because, thank you for that, by the way, but even if that were a non-factor, like say playing this on a regular Game Boy or a Game Boy player that doesn't make use of the Super Game Boy quote-unquote enhancements, the graphics in Superman are not very good, to be honest with you. The cityscape isn't too bad looking, it matches the look of the Superman animated series that this game is based upon, but the rest of the backdrops are generic looking tunnels, hallways, and not much else. Not to say the characters' designs are any good either, they're also quite bland, but you could at least make out Caped Wonder, guys in coats, sharks, and weird-looking aliens, so there's that. It's not the greatest thing ever. Not in the slightest, but The animation, lack thereof, is kind of awkward, but yeah, I've really got the audio though is truly atrocious stuff. There's little, if any, sound effects to be found here, and they mostly sound like something out of those bootleg NES games. What does greet you throughout the game constantly is the wonderfully horrific music, if you want to call it that brings new meaning to the phrase ear rape central. Actually, now that I think about it, music might have given me more of a headache than the wavy graphics in Stage 4. Oh well, whatever. Superman on Game Boy should have been a warning sign of things to come. These Titus guys couldn't make a decent Superman game with only 2 dimensions. Could you imagine the kind of garbage they'd retch out if given 3 whole dimensions? Well, you don't have to, it's on N64. And anyone thinking the aborted PlayStation version was going to be a better effort based on some half-finished prototypes are seriously deluding themselves. This was their first shot. It should have been their last shot. Overall, a hard pass on this potential health hazard. I still have that fucking headache, by the way. I'm going to bed. Happy New Year.